Welcome to the Paranormal Stakeout radio TV show with Larry Lawson. As a former career law enforcement officer and law enforcement educator, Larry focuses on the use of tried and true law enforcement investigative techniques in conducting paranormal investigations. Despite his experience and training, Larry also keeps an open mind to discussions on topics that deal with evidence that are not quite as physical in nature. Paranormal Stakeout guests are professionals in the field of the paranormal and parapsychology, conducting the investigations and research needed to further the cause of paranormal study. Larry advocates an agenda of standardization of structure and training in the field of paranormal investigation and research for the purpose of one day being able to produce the evidence needed to convince a jury of the existence of the paranormal. Whether it is ghosts, UFOs, unsolved mysteries, hauntings or cryptids, no topic is beyond the investigative reach of Larry Lawson and the Paranormal Stakeout radio TV show team. Now, here is the host of the Paranormal Stakeout radio TV show, Larry Lawson.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout. I'm your host, Larry Lawson, coming to you from the headquarters of the Florida Bureau of Paranormal Investigation and Indian River Hauntings in beautiful Vero Beach, Florida. It's been a wonderful week here. We've had Halloween. I've been deeply involved in that in the area, talking to folks about the thing that we all have the passion for, and that's researching the paranormal. And tonight, we've got a great guest. I'll get to that in just a second, but I want to remind everybody, if you want to find out a little bit more about the Florida Bureau of Paranormal Investigation and Indian River Hauntings, you can check us out at paranormalfbi.com and indianriverhauntings.com. You can also check out our YouTube page at Indian River Hauntings 2341. And one thing I like to mention is you can email me at ghostguy@paranormalstakeout.org. And if you do that and you have questions or thoughts or comments, I'd love to be able to share them with you at the beginning of each show. So if you get a chance, send me some thoughts and comments or questions if you have about the paranormal. Nothing is too strange or too out of this world to get the answers for you. If I don't have it, I'll find out who does. I want to mention also, check out all the broadcasting all the shows on xzbn.net. Great shows on the X Zone Broadcast radio and TV network. Now for our guest tonight, really anxious to talk to her. There's a lot of terrific experiences. My guest tonight is Karin Wilkinson. She's an author, a regular writer, and a contributor to newsletters. She deals with prophecy, supernatural, FBI, prophecy, supernatural, anything to do with the paranormal. She also deals directly with alien abduction and extraterrestrials. She's worked in the family software industry for many years before leaving to raise her family. She's a mother, a grandmother, and also a human abductee, an alien abductee, I'm sorry. So with that, I'd like to introduce Karin Wilkinson to the show. Karin, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Larry. I'm just so happy to be here with you tonight.
Well, I am too. Now, there are so many people that have had these experiences, and they come in so many different forms. I find yours particularly interesting because your reference to your Christian faith.
Yes.
This whole thing started with you when you were fairly young. Is that how I understand it?
Yes, absolutely. I was experiencing abductions by non-human entities from as young as I can remember, as early as I can remember in my life.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what it was that? First of all, why did they pick you? Do you have any idea?
No idea. I think a lot of it was who I was, the genetics of who I was, and that I was a good fit for what they were doing. I'm an author of a book, Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest, and that book outlines just the history of what happened to me, why I think they did it, and how I was able to stop it. And that's why my Christian faith is such an important part of my journey, because that's how I managed to stop the abductions.
You stopped it. Well, share with us how this whole thing started with you.
Sure.
You said it began at an early age. How did this happen?
I wish I knew. Somewhere along the line, possibly someone gave permission. I think it was a familial thing that it runs in families. I
Really?
believe that, yes, I absolutely do. And I think that's because the genetic materials that they are looking for, they being the extraterrestrial entities. It seems to be that with specific type of genetics, they are able to do more things. They utilize the genetic material to try to create hybrid entities with them and for other things. And when you're working with a family line, you can continue on with that specific genetic material that they've been wanting to use. I have a rare blood type, and that runs, in my family with some
Hmm.
members. And it
Hmm.
seems that those members are the ones who were targeted.
And do you have any indication or evidence that prior family members were also abductees?
Yes.
Okay.
I do, and I
Uh,
can't speak for those other people. It's their choice when they want to come forward, if they wanna talk about it publicly, because there's such a stigma behind it. Most people don't want to
mhm.
come forward and talk about it. I'm doing it because I think it's important to have this conversation. I started this, years ago, and trying to make it okay because there's such a stigma behind it, and then there's no healing, and there's no way for people to understand how they can stop it. And people are afraid to come forward and talk about it, and that's one of the reasons that I wrote the book.
And you mentioned genetics, so obviously they had to choose the right fit for them, if you will. And I want to
Mhm.
talk about who they are in just a couple minutes.
Okay.
But did you have any incidents prior to your first abduction experience that, looking back, you realize, oh, this was they were testing me, they were checking me out? Anything happened? First of all, how old were you? Let me ask you that. How old were you? Do you
Oh,
remember?
from my youngest memories, I was taken in a typical abduction type experience that many people I've talked about have talked with, I'm sorry, have had the same exact type scenario play out for them as well. We have very similar things happen in our lives, which is there's some comfort in that, knowing that you're not alone, because I've talked to so many people since I've started on this journey.
Well, when you
Um,
say your youngest age,
mhm,
2, 3, 4?
easily, yes.
Okay.
Be- mhm.
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, because there were certain types of these beings that you encounter.
Mhm.
When I was abducted, there would be several of the smaller gray entities, usually in the
Okay.
room, sometimes at the foot of the bed, sometimes beside the bed, just depending on where I was, if I was in bed or whatever. And then once I was taken and would wake up wherever they took me in that particular instance, often when I was very young, there were these what people call Nordic type alien entities around me.
Mhm.
And they look somewhat human, but they're tall, they're very slender, they have very light, almost icy clear colored hair, very icy blue green eyes, very pale skin, and they looked very similar, especially to a very small child like me at 3, 4, 5 years old, like some of the members of my family. And so for that side of the family whom they looked like, I was terrified of those members of the family, and no one could understand why. Well, and I couldn't voice that because we didn't have vocabulary for what these beings were. And it wasn't something anyone had ever talked about. It wasn't something that was, today there are movies and there are, resources and things that we didn't have way back then in the 60s.
Mhm.
So there was no vocabulary to even try to explain, and I was very young, so you don't have an extended vocabulary at that age, why I was terrified of them. But I would just scream whenever I saw them, just terrified. So it started very young, and it was a very common scenario over and over again of what you hear from, and I can explain the typical abduction scenario that
I'd
I would
I'd like you
like.
I'd like you to, because was it from the time you were young up until it ended, was it the same type of scenario?
It was very similar, absolutely, yes.
Describe that for us.
So it would begin, and I would feel a change in the room. I could almost feel like static or electricity, you know, your hair stands on end. I could feel a presence. And as I got older, I could sense evil and more of an evil presence. And sometimes it would get very quiet. Like if there were cicadas, crickets, something outside would just seem to stop. There are occasions where I would hear a very low, starting low and getting lower type hum noise. And then at that point, I would notice the beings and feel like I was in a state of sleep paralysis, much like what Vicki Joy Anderson talks about. And from there, I would either be levitated off the bed, and I would go up through a ceiling or out through a window, and I would see details as a very small child, especially at like my grandmother's house, in a ceiling, details in the wallpaper. There was wallpaper on the ceiling, the little curls on the edges or where it was slightly browned. I'd see the bugs and the dust and things in the light fixture. There was like a big square light fixture, you know, and wondering, how am I getting so close to this? Where am I going to go from here? And your body feels like it's almost shaking, vibrating into 1,000 million little pieces. And then a lot of times at that point, you're just switched off, like sleep, turned off. And it would also be the same when I go towards a window. The window's not open. How am I going through this window? Where am I going to go? And that was always the scenario: up through a ceiling, out through a window, or I was switched off before I was actually moved.
Question: were you physically moved, or because I've had some guests before that talked about interaction with alien beings, but their body stayed in the bed, and it was almost like they were astral projection. They were. Is that the type of thing, or was your body physically moved?
At that point in time, I was being physically moved. I was levitating. I mean, scariest thing. I mean, as a little kid, I was terrified. I was levitating off of a bed. I had no idea how any of this was happening, you know, and you can't scream because you're in a state of kind of sleep paralysis. And there are times, especially later in life, where I've had astral visitations and astral type things happen. And those are terrifying too, because you feel almost more helpless because you don't have your physical being to maybe fight back with or that, but you do have your mental capacity, so that, you know, you have that. But mostly it has been, throughout my life, has been physical, tangible abduction experiences where I come back with bruises, burns, marks, missing pregnancies, pajamas inside out, just so many different actual physical ramifications of what happened to me, physical ailments where the doctors can't tell me how it happened. I've had so many
what would they do
surgeries.
when you were a child? What could they have done to you? Do you have recollection of what they did to you as a 3 and 4-year-old?
Sure. And not every time, but for the times that I remember, that I have memories of, and there's snippets of memories here and there. It's not like you always remember the whole thing, and it's traumatizing too. So, but at a point I did learn to really separate that. I literally had what was the equivalent of a mental breakdown around 6 years old. But
Wow. Well, I want to talk about that. We're about ready to go to our first break.
okay.
It goes quick. When we get back, I'd like to talk to you about your family and how this all is connected, you feel, to your family. So, folks, stay with us. We've got a lot of questions to ask, interesting information. Stay with us. We'll be back right after these messages. We are back with my guest, Karin Wilkinson, alien abductee. Fascinating story. And I find it particularly interesting that it began happening to you as a young child. Many of the stories that I've heard, the victims were older. So I find it very interesting that you're a child, and also that you think it's in the bloodline. Let's kind of go back to that. What makes you think, or what takes you in that direction, that it was they followed your bloodline?
Right. What takes me in that direction is that I've had some years to speak with other abductees, other people who've been taken, and I keep stumbling across the one thing we all have in common is this rare blood type, this O negative blood type.
Oh, negative. Okay.
And it's not just like random. It's almost every person that I personally have spoken to. And when I've asked them, have you ever talked to anyone else? Or people like my friend L.A. Marzulli, who is how I really got started, talking about this, has also had that same interaction with people as far as blood type.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a little research into it, and I found out that not just me and the people that I've spoken with, but others have reported the same thing. So, and it seems to me that, there does seem to be a very specific type. And you think about an O negative blood type, it's missing the antigens on the outside of the cell. And that would make that easier to work with. I can donate my blood to anyone. I can give it to you. But if you don't have O negative blood, I can't take yours, which means it's a blood type that's very pliable, that you can work with, that people can utilize in many different ways. It's very sought after in that respect. So it would make sense if they were searching for something genetically to work with, they would want whatever would have the most use across any other
Gotcha.
type of blood.
So do other members or a significant number of members of your family have O negative?
There are a few. Yes.
Okay.
There are a
Now,
few.
I understand you want them to tell their story, but
Yeah, I really don't want to, as far as telling names, but I will say one
I
of my
understand that.
children has that blood type.
One of
and
your
has
children.
that.
Okay.
Mhm. And
How about
before,
prior to you?
prior to me, yes. And my family, absolutely, yes. The maternal side of my family had quite a bit of O negative bloodlines.
And have they, without using names, have they discussed with you or revealed to you that they've had similar experiences to you being abducted?
They have discussed strange things that happened to them over the years, but no one ever talked about actual abduction experiences. None of them. Honestly, I think because it was just something that they weren't comfortable talking about, and it isn't something that you just start talking about, even with your own family. You're afraid that you're going to be laughed at or ridiculed, or they're going to, what are you talking about? It's just until recently, in general, people just didn't want to talk about it. And now that we're having more and more disclosure events and more information coming out from the government, not that it's anything to say much about, but at least something is happening. There is some traction. Now it's becoming more accepted to talk about the subject of unidentified flying objects and non-human entities. People still have there's still a lot of negative stigma behind speaking about being an abductee, and that's something I really want to try to change.
Well, and I think that's happening too. I mean, I've had a number of guests on the show that have discussed this issue happening to them or others that they know. Um, I want to get back to the bloodline thing because you make a comment in here that you feel that the aliens are attempting to corrupt the bloodline. Now, are you talking about the O negative bloodline in general, or are you discussing humans and
Humans in general. And
okay.
this is something that goes back through ancient texts, whether it be our Holy Bible, whether it be ancient scrolls and other things, you can find some excuse me, information. But when you go into the Bible, you see right off in Genesis 3:15 where there sets up a scenario in the Garden of Eden where the serpent, the Nakash, has already tempted Eve, and Adam and Eve have now fallen. And the Lord comes into there and says, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and you will, you will bruise his heel and he will crush your head. Well, that's when the initial attempt to corrupt the bloodline to stop the birth of the Savior, to stop the birth of Jesus from happening. Didn't work out, obviously, clearly. So the second attempt after the birth of Jesus is going on, ongoing, and I believe and I agree with the late Dr. Chuck Missler and L.A. Marzulli and many others respected in that field, that there is an attempt to build an army, if you will, to create more of the hybrid type beings that are not 100% human, not 100%
So
alien.
let me stop you there for a second, because that brings up a very interesting topic.
Hmm.
What you're suggesting, or at least what I think you're suggesting, is that the biblical references to, for example, Adam and Eve, which
Hmm.
it talks about more of a spiritual event with Satan, are
Hmm.
you suggesting that was actually a connection to alien worlds?
Well, yes, I think you have to look at it this way. The entities that we're dealing with are not, they're aliens. Alien means that they're not us, right?
Right.
Extraterrestrial means they're not of this earth, because the earth is
Hmm.
where we as humans live, and it was created for us by God, by Jesus, for him, by him, and not one thing was created that was not created through him, by him.
Okay.
But these entities, there are other entities that biblical and ancient texts, and we in all kinds of different um, religious texts and things mention other entities that were here before us.
Hmm.
For me, as a Christian, these are what most people would refer to as angelic beings. So there's a whole hierarchy of other beings out there that aren't us, that God created before us, that are these angelic beings. They're all throughout the Bible. They are, as we know, some of them, or a third of them, fell with Satan, and the other
Hmm.
two-thirds are still with the Lord, right? So he's outnumbered 2 to 1. And that's what the late Dr. Chuck Missler used to say. And he doesn't have the numbers that God has on his side. But these beings, these entities that we are encountering are, in my opinion, and from what I have seen in person and I have experienced with them, are fallen angelic beings. These are fallen beings created by God, but they are not us. They are very different from us. They are
So,
alien. They are extraterrestrial.
okay. So what, once again, what you're suggesting, what I think you're saying is what we would consider angels, spiritual beings, are
Mhm.
really other physical creations by God that are coming to us from other planets created by God, but the ancient texts refer to them as spiritual angels.
Well, the
Is
texts
that
don't
kind of?
refer to them as spiritual really at all. They refer to them as sitting and eating meals with people all throughout the
Mhm.
biblical text. They also have them walking through walls. They have them breaking people out of jail. They have them,
Mhm.
doing all kinds of physical and spiritual things. They have them arriving in chariots of fire. They have them, you know, communicating with words. They have them communicating through dreams. They have them
Mhm.
doing all the same things that we see these alien entities doing today. They have good ones, and there are bad ones in the Bible
Mhm.
too. There are, when one angel was coming to, help a human, he'd be like, it took me a long time because I had a battle to fight on the way. There
Mhm.
are good and bad. There are malevolent and benevolent beings that God has created. Do I think they live on other planets? No, absolutely not. I think that they
Right.
still are with God in whatever heavenly realm he has them in at this point in time. We have different levels, of heavens. We have different, what people call astral planes, different areas that, and we are created for this earth, for this plane, for this
Mhm.
physical plane, and with the physics and the things that we understand. They're not created for this plane. They have advanced physics, advanced knowledge. They've been around a lot longer than we have.
So
And
you're
they're
you're almost saying that there's dimensions, perhaps different dimensions that they come from, and they pass through to here to make contact with folks unlucky enough to run into them like yourself. Is that
right.
is that where you? Okay. Um,
Absolutely. And we don't know about dimensions for sure. I mean, we're all guessing when it comes to that, because we only live in this dimension, and anything outside of that, we don't have anything physical that we intangible that we can work with to share in that realm,
well,
about that
aren't
realm.
we really guessing about all of this? I mean,
Well, I'm
really?
not guessing about what happened to me.
Not
I'm just
necessarily what's
guessing about
happening
my
to you.
memories.
No, 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 I'm not necessarily saying guessing about your memories,
Mhm.
but guessing where they came from or what their
No.
existence is. Or do you have, for example, you mentioned grays, and
Mhm.
that's a very common alien being that's talked about in a lot of the UFO literature. Are
Mhm.
the grays, for example, those angelic type beings?
Some are and some are not. There are several different
Okay.
types of gray entities. The ones that I have encountered that would show up in the bedroom or wherever, those are more of a avatar type suit, a suit made out of genetic material like skin, like we
Mm-hmm.
can do in a lab today.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, and from my experience, they are inhabited by a demonic entity, or they can be inhabited by an AI type entity. Demons are not fallen angels. Demonic entities are defined in ancient literature as the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. And the
Mm-hmm.
Nephilim are the progeny of the fallen watchers. There were initially 200 that fell, and the human women that they took and bred with. And then we know that they continued to do that because Genesis 6 tells us there were giants on the earth in those days and also after that. And the giants were the Nephilim. When they were killed in the flood, the Bible tells us that God left those spirits to roam the earth because they were neither from heaven nor earth.
Mm-hmm.
They were a little bit of both. They weren't intended to be created, and he found that to be an abomination.
Help me with this one. I'm familiar with Genesis and the discussion of giants, but where's the text that you have that connects these beings with the giants discussed in Genesis? Am I missing that somewhere?
Yes, some of that is from the ancient book of Enoch and
Mm-hmm.
Jasher and the book of Giants, and I have the list, and I can't bring them all to my
Mm-hmm.
to my memory at the moment. I'm so sorry, but a lot of that is from the extra biblical, extra canonical text, non-canonical texts that we have.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You know, these are verified ancient texts that are used for, you know, they're amazing for historical purposes and things like that.
We got to go to our next break.
Right.
I hate to do this. And do me a favor. I know if you could not hit your desk because I'm kind of watching you bounce a little bit there. So, folks, stay with us. We've got a lot more to talk about. We'll be back right after these messages. And we are back with my guest, Karin Wilkinson. What a fascinating discussion. One of the things I was thinking about on the break, you were talking about your bloodline, and you even had one of your children experience some things. Do you worry about your kids and your grandkids?
Not anymore. I did at one point in time, but now I understand the hierarchy of this, how it works, and where the authority lies. Because just as with anything else, there is a hierarchy. And while these beings may have the ability to do and manipulate energy, space, time, matter, physics in ways that we don't understand, there is a being above them. And there is a name of authority that I can call above that, and that's the name of Jesus. And when I understood that authority, and when I truly understood it, and it doesn't mean I had to be walk a perfect walk, be the perfect person, lead the perfect life. It means I had to understand that and understand that authority. And that once I gave my life to my creator, my savior, Jesus, and I believed that and understood that authority, I was able to stop this, not just for me, but for my family as well. And people like Vicki Joy Anderson also are great help when it comes to understanding ties and things that tend to bring some of these things into your life. It's not because I played with a Ouija board or because I did a bad thing. You know, understanding how these things happen and being able to prevent them is very important.
So, okay, once again, we're discussing aliens, and most of us, when we think of aliens, we think of flying saucers and coming from another planet, another galaxy, coming here to experiment on us or with us or whatever. Your suggestion, not the way you view this, is this actually spiritual warfare?
It is. It absolutely
Okay.
is.
When you were taken, and you've described physically being taken, were you
Mhm.
taken to a ship? Were you
I
taken
was
to a? Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no.
I was taken to various places. One in particular that I was taken to often was an underground facility. And I knew it was underground because we would get on this elevator thing and go down, and it just went, you could feel it going down. It just seemed to go down for a long time. And being little, I would, when I was explaining it as I got older, it's like, then we would get on an elevator that went side to side. And a friend of mine said, that sounds an awful lot like a train, and I'm like, oh yeah, I
Mhm.
guess my brain, especially as a little kid, just always put the elevator going the other direction then. But so generally it was to a facility that was underground. It was huge. There
Mhm.
were different types. There were absolutely times where I was taken on board a ship, different ships. They're mostly similar, the same. I don't have a ton of memories of being on the ships,
Mhm.
just waking up, going back to sleep, but more at certain times of my life than others.
Mhm. Now, help me with this one too. We're talking spiritual warfare, and once again, when most of us think of spiritual warfare, it's more of it's nothing tangible, not normally something we can put our hands on. Yet you talk about going to physical places and they're
Mhm.
doing physical things to you.
Because these are
W-
physical beings just like we are. So
Okay,
spiritual warfare happens in a physical realm. I mean, we have a spirit. We are a
right.
spiritual beings as well in a physical body, and they have the ability to exist in a physical form as well. And that
So,
all through history has shown to be true.
okay. What are they trying to do? What is their goal? I guess that's where the first part I want to where I want to go here. What is their goal?
You know, they never sat down and gave me their play by play what they want to do, but
Mhm.
what their goal, the part that I was privy to, the little bit that I know of, was to create hybrid entities that would match and fit into our society, our humanity, that you wouldn't know that they weren't 100% human.
Mhm.
To create entities that are not completely human, that would help to corrupt, the human beings that are on this planet, and to lead people astray, lead people away from the right path or goodness, and lead people into, you know, negative things and bad things, and away from salvation and away from God. And I'm not trying to sound all churchy and anything like that, but
Mhm.
there is, I do live and believe the Bible. It is the word of God. It is unfailing, and he is my creator, and that is
Mhm.
who I believe. And they have made it very clear that they are not benevolent, that they aren't here for good purposes, that they have their own very specific purpose, and it is not to help us.
But this is a battle for our souls. Would you agree from what you're describing? This is a battle for our souls?
It
Our,
is a battle to get as many souls as they can away from salvation. Absolutely. And that's a battle that has been happening since the Garden of Eden.
these were spiritual beings. I know they're in physical form, but if they're
Mhm.
spiritual beings, why not attack from the spiritual angle? Why attack from the physical angle?
Well, they do attack from a spiritual angle, and there are spiritual attacks that happen to people often, and we hear a lot
Mhm.
about that. But they also need to operate in a physical realm if they're going to have a bigger impact on people, because you can't attack everyone in the spiritual realm. There are a lot of laws and rules and stipulations that are put in place by God. We have
Mhm.
to agree to it, and you can't get to everyone that way. And they also can't, while they have the ability to be corporeal, they have a physical being, they don't have the ability to walk among us anymore, like down the street with you and I. That's why they've created the little gray entities that are what I call, just kind of like a suit that they can have
Okay.
to inhabit. That's why they're trying to create the race of half human, half alien, or whatever percentage they're getting that works, to create these hybrid entities so that they have something here in our physical corporeal world, because they can't I don't think that they can exist in our sunlight. They don't ever come out in the light.
Mhm.
They're usually underground or in their ships. There is something that we don't understand about how they can't survive here, and they're trying to get a proxy here.
Okay, so they travel in ships. Where are they coming from?
They are coming from whatever dimension or
All right, back to the dimensions.
heavenly
Okay.
realm that they live in.
Is it other planets?
I don't believe so,
Okay.
because
Um,
God didn't there's no indication that we have any societies currently on any other planets. There's nothing in our biblical realm. Is that to say that's not possible? No, not at all. But I don't have any indication of that now.
So, we talk often about how Satan's minions will come to Earth and corrupt people. What I'm getting from this description is these minions are actually taking the forms of grays. In their spiritual being is being enveloped in bodies of grays, to just use one example, right?
Well,
And then,
demonic entities are different than fallen angelic beings.
right,
Okay.
but they're still of Satan.
They're of the fallen realm. You can call
They're
them Satan or whatever, yes, you want. But
right.
yeah.
So, and to corrupt regular folks, they don these suits. They then kidnap folks, and they do what with young people, like when you were a child up to when
Mhm.
you were able to stop it, or other victims? What are they doing to the bodies exactly?
Well, when I was taken, they were running experiments on me. I mean, it would be anything from something that looked like a big X-ray machine to skin scrapings to blood samples to examining my spine, my bones, just every part of me. I mean, at different times it was different things. So I don't know what they are looking for that they don't have. I don't know what it is they don't understand, but they are
Okay.
definitely utilizing people, cattle. When you hear about the cattle mutilations,
Sure.
well, bovine blood is very compatible with humans as well. Bovine milk, bovine blood. There are a lot of studies out there about how bovine blood is used today in a lot of
Mhm.
different hospitals and things like that.
But they want to create the hybrid individuals. What are these hybrid individuals supposed to do? And I just want to make sure I'm clear on that. What are the hybrid individuals supposed to do?
I believe they're supposed to carry out whatever instructions they're given. They're supposed to act as a partially human proxy here with us to carry out whatever their deeds are. I don't know how the Antichrist will come to be. I don't know what their
Mhm,
exact plans are, but
mhm.
what they're doing is trying to create enough of them to carry out whatever it is they need to have done.
Right. We've talked about the Greys, and you've talked about there are other different entities that you saw.
Hmm.
How many do you think?
Oh, I have no idea. I mean, I've talked about, or I can describe the regular grays that are like the meat suits, the ones that can house
Mhm.
a demonic entity. There are a different type of gray that I've seen and been in contact with that are taller. They look older. They're not older, but they look more wrinkly. Their eyes move side to side, not like the bulbous head grays that show up in like your bedroom where their eyes seem stationary. There are the types that look like Nordic, is what the description generally used is, that are the tall, blonde, look almost human, but not quite. Their eyes are really big compared to ours, maybe 50% larger. There are reptilian type that have a just a very disturbing look about them, but they look like they have a
Big
human
lizards.
stature, but with
Mhm.
almost the very flat ears, very flat nose, very thin, almost non-existent lip type across their mouth. There are the mantis types that I've seen not up close. They were always sitting kind of way back in a corner somewhere. They
Mhm.
never came in and interacted with me in any way. They seemed to be kind of in charge or just watching over things, but they didn't tell me that's what they
Where
were.
you know where they come from? I mean, you're describing that you don't necessarily think they're coming from planets. Are they coming from beneath the top of the earth? Are they underground? I mean, where are they coming from
It's a
if they're not
really
coming
good
from?
question. We don't have any answers to that because we don't understand the heavenly realms. The only thing we understand is our realm here on earth where we live. So we don't have an understanding and we're not given anything to understand the other realms. We know people go into, different, when they're doing like remote viewing and things like that, go into different realms. We know there's an
Mhm.
astral plane that we get taken into, but we just don't understand the heavenlies and the heavenly realms. It's like saying, where does God come from? Where does God live?
That's a good point.
You
And
know,
with that, we're coming up on our last break. So, folks, stay with us. I'm with Karin Wilkinson, and we're talking about alien abductions and what that means in the spiritual world. So, stay with us for our last segment. We'll be back right after these messages. And we are back with my guest, Karin Wilkinson. What a great interview. A lot of interesting things are coming out of this. First of all, you had mentioned reptilians, you had mentioned underground. Are you familiar with a theory of an underground facility in California that
no,
is run by reptilians that takes children there? Are you familiar with that at all?
no, I'm not familiar with that particular theory, but I can tell you that as a child where I was taken, there were a lot of that type of entity there. And the things that happened to me when I was older
Mm-hmm.
were disgusting or horrifying.
Well, um, before we get too far on, I want to remind everybody, if you want to find out more about my crew, the Florida Bureau of Paranormal Investigation, as well as Indian River Hauntings, check us out at paranormalfbi.com or indianriverhauntings.com. Check us out on YouTube at Indian River Hauntings 2341. And most importantly, check out all the other great programming right here on the X Zone Radio and Television Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. And Karin, I would be remiss if I did not ask about your book, and tell us about your book and where folks can find you.
The book is called Stolen Seed, Evil Harvest. I don't know if you can see it behind me, so I'll hold one up there so you can see it. It is available currently exclusively at lamarzulli.net, and that's LAMARZULLI.net. You can find a link to that at my website, which is KarinWilkinsonAuthor.com, and I can give you all of those links if you want for the show notes. You can find me on Facebook, and you can also link to my website through my Facebook, which my Facebook is just my name, Karin Wilkinson. Or you can find me on most social media just by looking up my name. But yeah, right now it's available in the last month, so we're just getting started.
Okay. Well, thank you much for that. Now, we've covered a lot of things, and really this challenges most people's perception of God, angels, demonic or evil entities. We've got a mixture, from what I'm seeing, of spiritual beings, using physical meat suits, as you described it, in order to deal with us. We're also talking about different types of alien entities. Some of them are here, some of them are spiritual. How does this all come together so that we can make sense of it? How can the average person comprehend this?
Most of it is beyond a lot of people's comprehension, and a lot of people end up with a certain amount of cognitive dissonance about it when they start to learn about what's happening. And as our government is slowly giving out details and information, that's where they're doing this so slowly, because it's more than most people can take in one bite and can understand and can handle. So, it all coalesces, it all does come together. I promise people it does make sense, but it is a lot to take in when you've never looked outside the comfortable bubble that most of us allow ourselves to live in. But these
Sure.
beings are real, and spiritual, wickedness in high places is real, and these entities are real. I can assure you of that.
Well, being a cop for 40 years, I have seen my share of evil, so I cannot I cannot agree with you more that evil exists. I think the problem that most folks are going to have is connecting the spiritual angle with the physical beings that are here. And I've heard a couple people say up to 183, I think, different types of aliens have been
Mhm.
seen. Does that resonate with you at all? Is that possible?
Absolutely, because the angelic beings, just of our Christian Bible, there are so many described even in the Bible, and it says that there are many, 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 more than we can imagine that were created. So think of, just these, more than there are humans, there are many more angelic beings. and they are also spiritual, and they have abilities that far outreach ours, and that far outreach our understanding. And at some point, yeah, there comes a little bit of faith, because this is so far beyond what most of us are going to be able to comprehend and understand in our lifetime.
You talked about, well, you've talked about learning to pilot a UFO.
Mm-hmm.
So you've actually been on a ship that has come from somewhere else.
Yes, there are
Okay,
physical ships, but these ships are alive. They're not like getting in a car and driving them. They're very different. And
explain. If you can you describe that to us?
sure, they feel like they're alive. They feel like they're made of a living substance. And when I sat in the chair, it formed around me. When I thought about where I wanted it to go, that's where it went. I was a little bit of Stockholm syndrome for a while, and I was buying into the message they were trying to sell me. And at that point in
And what was
time,
that? What was that message?
that they were our benevolent space brothers here to help us and spread love and light. But love and light is not kidnapping little children. Love and light
True.
is not raping women and ripping babies from their wombs. Love and light is not doing these things repeatedly to people and to animals over and over
Mhm,
again. It's like an abuser giving you a pretty dress,
mhm,
letting me do something like pilot a ship for a short time. They'll sprinkle in a nice thing here and there to keep you on
mhm.
board, to keep you with the narrative, so that you will say, oh, there's nothing wrong with aliens. They're great. They're nice. That's not the case. And it's not what they've exhibited. The
So
facts
you
are they're exhibiting very, very bad behavior.
sounds like it. Now, you mentioned that these were our space brothers, our benevolent space family to take care of
But
us.
they're not.
But a little while ago you said they really weren't from other planets. Is that what they're trying to make you believe? Is that they're and why would they want you to believe they're from other planets?
Because they want you to trust them and believe them, and they are
Mhm,
deceptive, and the
mhm,
deception runs very deep, and everyone wants to believe in this wonderful fantasy of them coming down and saving the earth and saving us. Well, there are very wonderful good angelic entities out there, and I have had
mhm.
experiences with them when I had my near death, what I call a near life experience. but
Okay.
but the ones that are abducting people, the alien entities that are taking children, taking women, taking sperm from men. I have so many men that I have met and talked to who have been abused by these entities in that way.
Mhm,
Taking unborn children. I mean, it's not benevolent. These are not, and they are not our ancestral seeders. We were created by our one true creator, by God, not by these things, not by these alien entities.
why are they so interested in us?
They are
Just
interested. They're fallen. And this whole thing started back in the Garden of Eden. They were jealous of God said, let us create a race of, there was already the war. The fallen had
mhm,
already happened.
right.
Satan and the third of the angels had already fallen. And he was the most beautiful of all of the angelic beings before he fell. That's how the
Mhm,
Bible described him. He was the
mhm,
morning star. He was beautiful. And then he fell. And there was a rebellion. And so for those third, then God created man out of the dirt and
mhm,
gave us dominion. We were handed the title deed to this earth. We were given dominion on
mhm,
this earth. And through him, eternal life. We were given the ability to marry, to procreate. This
mhm,
is something that these angelic beings didn't do. This is something that the biblical scripture tells us they cannot do. They don't give, or they're not given in marriage, and they don't do any of these things that we do here. There was a certain amount of jealousy, because it also shows in the biblical text that they inhabited this earth, this area,
mhm,
before it was destroyed when they rebelled. And then
mhm,
God recreated the earth, put us here. So there's a great
mhm.
deal of upset, a great deal of jealousy,
Oh,
great deal of,
I can see that. And I find it interesting that the way that most of us have interpreted or read the Bible through our years, uh, really is almost a space adventure. Now, getting back to you piloting the ship, Where did it, and I just because I find that fascinating, if they gave you that opportunity, and I get what you're saying, they were trying to befriend you. I get that.
Yeah.
Where did you go? Where did they ask you? Where did it take you? Did you travel to other planets?
No, it was nothing that exciting. It was just up and down and, back and forth over hills and just going really high. So just above the earth in this
Mhm.
area, nothing far away. There were no planets, there were no faraway galaxies. It was all right here, right within our little space. And I
Well,
could see, it was thrilling, but again,
yeah,
I don't like to glamorize it because I don't want anyone to now go looking after going, "Oh, I want to be abducted. I want to pilot a UFO." It's
yeah, I
not
don't think
worth
we'll find that.
it's not worth it. No.
No. Why? And I know I asked this question earlier, but it's still kind of cloudy to me.
Okay.
Why do they want us to think that if they're creatures that are either living below our surface, spiritual creatures wearing meat suits, why do they want us to think that they're from other galaxies, other planets? What is the reasoning? Do you have any idea there?
I don't think they really do. I don't know that anyone's ever gotten that message from anyone. I'm not sure where that comes from. I think it's just something that humankind has made up because it sounds good.
Because they
But
maybe
I
can't
don't
understand it?
yeah, I don't remember getting some kind of a message sent to our government from Iridae Epsilon or some strange galaxy or planet somewhere saying, "Hey, we're from here." So,
No, no, I
um,
I I get
they
that, but
never said to
everything.
me that they were, and I don't know anyone else who ever heard that. So, I think it's just something we want to think.
Well, I mean, you're describing traveling in a ship above the
Mhm,
earth and looking down, and you're talking about the grays, which is a very common description of an alien being. I
mhm,
guess, is that how we're perceiving it? Because it sounds like that's what they want us to believe. And you're
mhm,
saying they're spiritual beings rather, but that they
mhm.
want to us to believe they're from another planet. That's kinda how I'm taking it.
I think so, yeah, they're spiritual beings that can take on a corporeal form,
Mhm,
and then except for the demonic entities, which are the disembodied, so those are the demons, but, we don't know where they live or where they come from. We don't saying, for someone and a lot of people will say, "Oh, I think they come from Venus or Mars or whatever,"
mhm,
you know, they may have been able to inhabit some planets or go to and from them, but they're not
mhm.
from there. I honestly believe they're from here before us and now got kicked off and are with God wherever heaven is.
They're with
But I
God.
don't think heaven's on a planet. Well, the
Okay.
non-fallen ones are with God, and the ones that are
I
fallen
gotcha.
got kicked
Okay.
out.
Well, this has been a
Oh,
fascinating discussion, and I think it bears much more discussion because it's a concept that I think most folks have trouble comprehending. And I hear what you're saying, but I do appreciate you being with us tonight, and I thank you for your time. And folks, I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight here on the Paranormal Stakeout, and we'd like you to come on back next week. But in the meantime, take care of your family, hug your kids, take care of those that you love, okay? And until we meet again, take care, and we'll see you on the other side. Have a good night.